Singapore, largest port in the world, in a city-state barely larger than Toronto. Since its independence from Malaysia in 1965, which had in turn obtained its independence from the British 2 years earlier, it has experienced the fastest growth in Asia and one of the fastest in the world.
Today, the island state presents itself as one of the most admired nations on the planet, and whose residences are routinely ranked among the wealthiest and most long-lived. But within these confines of prosperity, problems still appear. Today, Singapore faces the challenge of an aging population and low birth rates, and we must ask ourselves, what must we as a nation do to survive and prosper in the coming age? Hello, my name is Daniel, and these will be the issues we will be exploring in the next 10 minutes. 5. That is the ratio of working adults to retired adults in Singapore today. At the beginning of this century, that number was 8. Singapore is experiencing an unprecedented age shift. According to the Committee on Aging Issues under the Prime Minister's Office, by 2030, over 900,000 of the current citizen population will retire from the workforce. That is about a quarter of our citizen population. At current trends, by 2030, this will be down to 2. What will that number look like when you retire? Less than 2? So according to the World Bank, Singapore has the highest proportion of older residences and the fastest aging population in Southeast Asia. As more of the population enters into retirement, we will have to spend more. You, I, the government. This means a heavier burden on the working population, which in turn may lead to higher taxation and ultimately a reduction in the quality of life for everybody. But wait, it gets worse. Coupled with an aging population, Singapore struggles with a really low birth rate. The CIA Factbook ranks Singapore 221 on the list of 224 nations for birth rates. That's 4th from the bottom. As developed nations go, only Japan ranks lower than us, and they have been in a decades-long recession, in part due to the same problems Singapore now faces. In 2011, the total fertility rate, or TFR, was just 1.22. By the way, we need a replacement rate of 2.1 to remain sustainable. So what does this mean? Well, let me illustrate this for you. With a TFR of just 1.2, it means that for every 100 Singaporeans in this generation, there will be only 60 in the next generation. And in the generation after that, there will only be 36. These 36 people will have to eventually support the 60 people from the previous generation and many of the 100 people from the generation before that. At these current birth rates and without immigration, our citizen population will begin to shrink around the year 2025. And that's the lowest line on the graph that you see. But this doesn't have to happen. We see a robust immigration flow into Singapore is critical to maintaining our current living standards as the population ages and birth rates drop. New immigrants will have the skills and the traits necessary for Singapore to remain stable as the population ages. These new immigrants are essential to our stability. They will adopt a heavier role in sustaining the country's economy and allow for Singapore's native population to age gracefully and without having to make too many sacrifices in their retirement years. Dr. Sir Yong Park from the Department of Economics at the University of Illinois performed an economic study precisely asking this same question many of us have. Does immigration benefit a regional economy with an aging population? The answer? Yes. Critically yes. Immigration does play a critical role in maintaining labor force levels and contributions to social security programs. The National Population and Talents Division under the Prime Minister's Office has taken a similar view and estimates that Singapore would need about 25,000 new citizens every year to prevent the existing population from shrinking and to sustain a citizen population that is stable with a stable age distribution. The assumption is that an increase in immigration will lead to a larger and younger workforce. This then allows for industries to develop, early retirement to take place, and sufficient human resources to run the country and maintain standards of living for the population. Now, admittedly, immigration is not the only answer in addressing the effects of an aging population and low birth rates. The Singapore government already has programs like the Baby Bonus Scheme, the Social Development Network, and grants for skills upgrade under Spring Singapore. Now, the Baby Bonus Scheme is designed for families to defray the cost of raising a child. It comprises of a cash gift and co-savings account with the government that matches dollar for dollar of what they put in. It's used to pay for costs associated with child raising like school fees and medical expenses. On the productivity side, Singapore has numerous schemes aimed at adding value to the workforce through skills upgrade. The government statutory board, like Spring Singapore, exists to grow local enterprises and also functions to disburse study grants. So for example, a working adult wishing to study for a relevant degree can receive full subsidies for their school fees. They need only to apply to Spring through their company. Other programs like the Social Development Network are designed to increase local marriage rates. The network acts like a national dating agency that uses aggressive techniques to pair up singles. The hope is that relationships would lead to marriage and marriage to offspring. However, these solutions only serve to maximize the country's population potential. It does nothing to add to it in any significant way. Singapore still needs new and warm bodies to move to the island state in order to reverse the effects of an aging population and to counter the low birth rates. We need only to look at Japan to observe how detrimental the effects of an aging and low birth rate population looks like.
根岸武美と申します。あと3ヶ月で80歳になります。80歳を目前にして開業しました。
To a government report, Japan's current population of 127 million will go down to 106 million by 2040, and it will decline to 86 million by 2060. That's 30% decrease from 2010. In addition, by the time Japan reaches 2060, the largest demographic will become 86-year-olds. That's 4 out of 10 people who will be over the age of 65. Whoa. How does a country like this survive?
According to the Asian Development Bank and the United Nations, Japan's population has been shrinking for the last 3 years, with over 26% of the population now over the age of 65 and about 33% over the age of 60. Japan is the canary in the mine for Singapore. It would be prudent to take heed. Jim Rogers, an American businessman, investor, and one of the more famous immigrants to Singapore, believes that limiting immigration into Singapore would be detrimental to its future development. He quotes and writes, "One of the reasons why Singapore has been successful," he says, "is because it encouraged immigration. Every country in history that has a backlash against foreigners is going to go into decline."
Everybody needs outside ideas, outside capital, outside expertise. The idea that you can just close off. Many countries have tried. In 1962, Burma was the richest country in Asia. Now it's about the poorest, because in 1962 they said, we don't want any more foreigners. We're not going to let foreigners come here with their brains, their ideas, or anything else. Closed down. Ghana in 1957 was the richest country in the British Empire. The richest country, and they said, no more foreigners, we don't want the foreigners, we're going to throw the foreigners out. Within 6 years they were bankrupt, had a military coup because they were a total disaster.
We cannot be a country with xenophobic attitudes. The failure to support policies on immigration will result in an increase in financial burdens, longer working hours due to labor shortage, and continued delays in the retirement age well past the current mid-60s. Wouldn't you rather retire early and enjoy life than to work well past an age where it becomes difficult to enjoy your golden years? As a nation, we need to adjust our attitudes on immigration, and we need to start having honest conversations on what kind of country do we want. The reality is that Singapore has an aging population with low birth rates. Responsible immigration is not just the best solution, it is also the only sustainable solution. Thank you for listening.